It's not about what you have, it's about who you have. It's not about where you live, it's about how you live. And it's not about what you do, it's about why you do it. Welcome to the Momentasize Podcast. Today I have got a guest on here who, in my opinion, has the inside of a revolution that we don't even really know what's going to happen yet. He is heading up a great company. It's called Scalers AI, and he's in the thick of it, has a great business around artificial intelligence and how it's going to change the world. Without further ado, please help me welcome Steen Graham to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Okay, I got to ask you, is AI coming for everybody's jobs or not?
I think the kind of clear answer is, it's not. Yeah. And I think it has an opportunity to make a lot of people more productive, and it has an opportunity to kind of unlock this like unfulfilled promise of so many people that, maybe like in their mind, they may be so creative, but they just can't put pen to paper. And so AI can come in and, make them great content creators, like manifest their ideas and their visions. And so certainly there's going to be some, mundane jobs that maybe people aren't going to want to do that might be replaced, with AI. But I think it's really just a force multiplier for people like with ambition and interest. It's really an incredible opportunity. I think the other thing that most people don't think about is we're going through workforce transitions right now. So like demographics of the whole world is changing.
Yeah.
And if you look at places like, for example, by China, they're going to have, hundreds of millions of people retiring, out of the workforce by like 2055 because of their demographics, because of their historic policies. And so to sustain an economy, you have to be more productive. And so they're going to have to replace those jobs with, robotics and, artificial intelligence tools if you want your economy to even stay flat. And we're starting to see those demographic trends kind of scale to the West, certainly Western Europe. And here we're seeing, less and less birth rates. And so if we want to continue to grow our economy, then we kind of have to get a little bit more productive. And so definitely not fearful about taking people's jobs, but I do feel like it's like the most incredible thing about AI is it's unlocking kind of innovation of everybody.
Yeah. Awesome. So you heard it here, right? Steen, the man who is literally pushing this out and helping companies take AI and bring it into their operation, is saying you don't need to fear it, you need to embrace it. And it's going to it's almost going to be like a co-pilot for people, right? An additional tool to help just massively increase productivity. Is that right?
Yeah, I think everybody loves kind of the co-pilot branding. I think it's a great comparison. I think, just simple like way to think about AI right now is like what AI is, pretty good at right now is like paperwork.
Yeah.
And so like imagine not a lot of people love doing paperwork, right? Yeah. But you still want the expert, the domain specific expert, the human in the loop. But hey, maybe you just don't like the mundane elements of filling out the paperwork. So, you auto populate that paperwork and then the expert, checks in. So that's where I think the co-pilot promise is maintained by just kind of allowing you to kind of interact and scaling up what you like to do versus eliminating some of those boring.
Yeah. One thing, the paperwork one makes good sense to me. What blew my mind a little bit, which I wasn't expecting, is originally I didn't think that it would have so much creativity. So I've watched people produce like the AI drawings. A song got sent to me the other day that was completely built on ChatGPT, right? And so the creativity component kind of blew my mind. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's a little bit counterintuitive insofar as like we think like what is human, a part of like being human we think is being creative.
Yeah.
And as it pertains to these models today, they have the opportunity to kind of train on everything that humans have created.
Yeah.
At least like all of the publicly available text information that we put out on the internet. And to a little bit lesser extent, like a lot of, image and video data. And so like giving the model all of that data makes them exceptional as far as like, creativity. And they know kind of what people like based on that pattern recognition capability. But I think like when you really look at humanity, like we're always like getting inspiration from others. And so if you think about it, like, all the great artists and creators, they listen to music and they get inspired, and like, that's part of like their process. And so in this particular case, like think about if you could be inspired by, every line that's ever written in music. And that's kind of the advantage that the large language models have today, or the generative AI models have today, is they've listened to every song ever.
Yeah.
And they know kind of what people like as it pertains to rhyming as well. So it's an interesting thing where I think it's challenging us as humanity to think about, okay, what is our core skill?
Yeah. I know that it's blowing my mind. Like, I'm not on the inside, right? But all I can tell is, like, if I do not embrace this and start to understand what can happen with this tool, I'm going to get completely left behind. Like, that's the only, I just feel that inside. I'm like, I got to at least have a good beat on how to start using this, how to start using the one I think everyone knows is ChatGPT, right? That's been pushed out, how to properly use it. And one thing I found when I do play around with it is it's only as good as the inputs that you ask of it, right? Kind of like a Google search. It's like, as well as I can input is the data that you get out. Do you feel like ChatGPT has good, accurate data? Do you feel like it's like, how is that going to evolve over time, and how is that going to shape, how we interact and how we do work?
Yeah. Well, I think right now, GPT, is a fabulous kind of innovative tool. Unfortunately, most of like kind of the off the shelf models today, they do have, hallucinations.
Yeah. What's that?
Well, hallucinations is just kind of, you ask it a question and it gives you kind of the wrong answer.
Yeah.
But it's, a lot of these models are kind of prone to generating answers. That's what you're asking them to do.
Yeah.
And so if they don't have the accurate data, it's not like sometimes they won't say, I don't know. Sometimes they'll give you an inaccurate input. And so, for example, if you're looking at, if you asked it a question about like an earnings call that happened last week, what was the revenue of this company? In some cases, if you're not like using, sometimes ChatGPT might say, no, I don't have it. But in some cases, like they'll kind of like BS how the earnings call went a bit. And that I think itself, something that people should be worried about. But obviously with, kind of being able to search all the publicly available information, those features have been added. You get a little bit more fortified outcome.
Yeah.
I think where you get a little bit like, what a lot of people are doing today is most kind of private companies not quite good enough. The off the shelf tools are not quite good enough. So plus they want to maintain kind of their IP and their privacy of maybe their customers, or their records. And so they'll add a database with the model. And so then the model can actually search the database for an accurate answer and annotate it. And so before you'd like push a button and send something off, you might be able to, just actually annotate it, double check the information, and before you go. And there's a lot of like techniques that are emerging right now. But one of the things that you said that was like, quite accurate is, there's prompt variation that's quite significant. So like if you like, the question is really important.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so some of us are actually working on kind of cutting edge techniques to remove the human prompt.
Yeah.
Because if you're working for like an application, like let's, for the context of your viewership, let's talk about like an appraisal.
Yeah.
Like if you want to kind of like auto generate appraisal with generative AI, you want a high quality output.
Yeah.
And sometimes due to the human variation of the questions they may ask, you just might want to design all those questions in software so they're the same every time. So it gets the highest quality output, and you even avoid that. And so one of the things that everybody kind of got hyped up about was this thought of like this prompt engineer.
Yeah.
And it is fairly important. Like good prompts are important, but also, that might not be a sustainable role because we might design those prompts in software as well.
Exactly. You might just take the prompt engineer out of the whole thing and just say, hey, here's for appraisals, like here's the consistent questions. Now we're taking the human error out of prompts in general, and we're just going to be able to let this data rip based on preset questions. It's going to be pre-frameworked is what I'm hearing you say there.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. So, I mean, Steen, you're a young guy. You have 23 employees, both, like you have employees here in the United States and in
Bangalore, India.
Bangalore, India. Yeah. What's it like, you're doing millions of dollars a year. What's it like building a company like that? How did it get started? Just tell us a little bit about it. And by the way, so everybody knows, it's called Scalers AI. So if you want to look it up, but what was that like?
Yeah, well, I think kind of my career started at Intel, so one of the iconic companies.
Yeah, chip makers, baby.
Yeah, chip maker. And when I started at Intel, we were a couple of generations ahead of Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Group. Certainly the most advanced manufacturing processes of the world. Designing some of the most incredible technologies in the world that kind of built what is the modern internet and all these experiences we have today digitally. And I think for a long time, I stayed there 17 years. For a long time there, I was quite intimidated, to start a company. And I always aspired to, because if you look at hardware's hard. Everybody always says. And, when I was started, it cost $3 billion to start a manufacturing facility. And now there's facilities that are 10x that.
Yeah.
And so you think a lot, wow, and there's so much asymmetry.
Meaning you're saying $30 billion to start it?
Just one fab, if you want to do one fab.
Yeah.
Yeah. But now today they've decoupled things where like companies like NVIDIA, they don't actually manufacture, they design just the chip. And then like somebody like Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Group will manufacture for that. But just the manufacturing facility can cost tens of billions of dollars today.
Jeez.
So it's quite expensive. And then just the amount of physics and just incredible engineering that goes into that is quite intimidating. So anyhow, I will say I got the gift, and later in my career, the gift that I got is, the opportunity to work, more on the software side of things.
Yeah.
And, that kind of later in my career, I was working more. I did have responsibilities that included, the chips, the AI chips in particular, and kind of the edge computing chips. But where I found a lot of joy was building, software solutions with AI that solved industry specific problems.
Yeah.
It was just kind of, really, really fun. And that inspired me to start the company about 3 years ago. And building a company is fun. I think, it's fun, it's intimidating. And, I think it ultimately is just about how much you want to grind. Yeah. And, listening to prospective customers and trying to solve their problems, and just doing it one customer at a time, one problem at a time. And, I think it's quite a grind.
Was there a light bulb moment for you? I mean, you spent 17 years at Intel. Was there a light bulb moment for you when you're like, hey, yeah, now I'm ready to start my own business? What was that like?
Yeah, I think, the light bulb moment for me was when, you see the cycles when it comes to designing and manufacturing computer chips are so long. It's like 3 to 7 year kind of range.
From like inception to actually pushing it out.
Yeah, to seeing it turn on a server or light up somebody's personal computer. And so that was always very intimidating to me. But then I started, as I started to gain more experience and more exposure to like modern software methodologies, you're like, wow, you can do cool stuff in a week and in a day, and you can actually drive value for enterprises and customers. And you can start analyzing medical images with AI. You can start looking at satellite imagery to look at fast moving weather patterns and storms. You could look at the health of coral reefs with computer vision technology. I mean, there's like all this really cool stuff you can do, and the code to get you to something that was inspirational was weeks away, not years away. And so that was kind of the aha moment for me to start the company. And I've been gifted with a great team and a great co-founder that made it a lot easier to make it successful.
Yeah. So the light bulb moment was like, hey, the hardware, although you knew it and you were building that in Intel, it's one, capital intensive, and it takes a lot of time. And then as AI was being worked on behind the scenes, I always think it's fascinating too, like technology, right? We're seeing it now, and it's probably been being worked on. How long has AI been in the works and talked about before it actually was released? I mean, were you guys talking about AI, working on AI stuff since you were at Intel, or like?
Yeah, we had been working, kind of on a number of tools around AI for kind of the entirety of my career.
Yes, so it's been worked on forever. It's being worked on forever.
Yeah, and decades before that, and I think there's kind of like a famous story, like one of the first production implementations of AI was an algorithm for like postal service routing.
Okay.
And then we went into like the dark ages of AI. So AI has went through like these kind of like, spurts of demonstrating success, and then some dark ages. And,
you think just because people aren't ready for it yet, like the technology's there, but the rest of the world's not ready for it yet, or how come that happens?
No, the modern, kind of the modern success that we've had in AI is mostly derived by feeding the models more data.
So it's data input.
Yeah, and the cost of computing that data, and so we almost needed to wait until we had the quantity of data and the ability to compute that data for it to be successful. And
essentially, you're saying the internet. You needed the internet to season and more input to be put onto the internet, because that made it very quick and simple to have data input into the AI models. Am I understanding that correctly? Is that right or not?
Like on the other side, you needed a sufficient data set, but you also needed the computational capabilities to actually make something of that data set too.
Meaning speed on computation?
We needed the GPUs and the CPUs to perform.
What is that?
Well, so just like the brain of the computer is usually the central processing unit. And so that's kind of what runs the computer. And for AI, if you guys have seen kind of all the noise about NVIDIA, so NVIDIA is this company that was predominantly known a decade ago for its incredible graphics capability. So like people
video game
graphics. So they would, you'd have a central processing unit or the CPU, and then if you're a gamer, you would have a GPU card, and that GPU card would like render these incredible gaming graphics. And it turned, like that the reason they can do that is because the GPUs are incredibly good at parallelization, like doing a lot of tasks, and CPUs are more oriented around sequential work. And so the GPUs, what happens when you use modern AI, or when you develop modern AI, is you do a bunch of like multiplication and matrix multiplication, and that's really done well parallelized. And so as NVIDIA, and others have kind of invested in their GPU capabilities, people realize, wow, this is really, really good for making AI models. And specifically some of these kind of modern transformer models that exist today. And the kind of the transformer architecture was what inspired the large language models that everybody like kind of became aware of. Gosh, this is a couple of years ago now when GPT 3.5 came out, and people were like, wow, these transformer-based language models are really, really cool. And so, but that it really took the confluence of, modern GPUs and the massive data set to compute that, and then making that affordable and making great models.
Yes. Yeah. If I'm understanding like even the software business right now in general, it's essentially Scalar's AI, right? You saw that there's an industry opportunity to come help businesses to fast track. Let's say they have all these procedures. If I understand what you guys do, you have all these procedures, right? That if somebody needs to get trained on all of them, well, you now were able to create a software that combines the data sets and then spits it out in a very quick, simple way for people to get access to that information. But now it's specialized to their proprietary knowledge. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's a good kind of a good breakdown. I think what really we do today is a lot of companies have been inspired, by language models and chatbots, and they really want to.
Chatbots meaning like if I'm on the website there and like that thing pops up and they're like, hey, can I help you? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. And like, the questions and answers like GPT, and they've been kind of inspired by that, and they want to do that within their own company. But they have such kind of high fidelity, important businesses that they can't have bad outcomes. They can't have hallucinations. Yeah. So they can't kind of use something that's consumer facing in that regard. Number two is they have their own proprietary data. Yeah. And they don't want to kind of upload that proprietary data on the web, and maybe lose that. And number three, they've got some business processes, and maybe just like riffing on like an appraisal. Yeah. An appraisal is done kind of, sequentially the same way with the same methodology every time. And it's, the report is derived, and it's, this pristine report. You don't really want to you don't really take a chatbot, and chatbot doesn't replace an appraiser or that flow, or it's not really that functional and helpful of a co-pilot. If you start making it bespoke to make appraisers' jobs easier, you can actually, make that flow happen much better if it's industry specific. And then there's privacy requirements and appraisals, et cetera. So you can't just use publicly available consumer tools to do that type of thing. And so, we really work with companies that have their own proprietary data processes that want to keep it proprietary. And then we help them integrate into kind of what we would say like their workflows. So it really goes beyond, a chatbot interface or kind of a simple consumer-based copilot, and really becomes like the document generation that they were looking to do. So they can get their jobs easier and faster. And we do all our stuff human in the loop too. So we never take the expert out of the equation. But we're just trying to make the expert more productive, make their life easier, and get them to that last mile. That's the hardest part. That
I think I understand it better now. So it's actually workflows. It's not just spitting out for training. It's full workflows. So it's like the appraiser company, if I had a nationwide appraisal company, now I could take that, and you could take the proprietary information we need, keep my appraiser in the loop, like you said, a human loop. But instead of him having to do or her having to do those inputs, you could speed that whole process up. So you can come in, take the system, the workflow that they have, and create AI to speed the whole thing up. I mean, it's more than what I originally said. It's like to take proprietary information and the workflow and the human, and boom, speed it up with AI.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that right?
Absolutely. And I think the other thing, like a good example too, is like
that's why it's called scalers, baby.
yeah. And another thing you think about too is let's look at a more kind of, difficult scenario where, somebody's like been impacted by a hurricane. There's a regulatory requirement to get people, paid so they can rebuild their house. Right. So, there's
from an insurance claim side.
And the insurance companies, they actually really want to get, people paid. Right. But you have to go through the process of all the paperwork in the claim and all the expertise in the claim. But I mean, we all know, like, we can look at the satellite imagery, we can look at the weather patterns, we can, look at the footage that we know the houses that are impacted. And it's the ability to kind of like speed that process up by giving somebody like a almost complete report, looping in, the claims adjusters and the experts in a faster way. So when they have this like massive amount of work, it can be solved quickly. And so you can put money into the pockets of people that need to rebuild their homes faster. Like that's really important. And I think today's AI, like the consumer facing AI that you see today, is quite inspirational to making that happen. But the work of the proprietary data, the proprietary workflows, and the high fidelity that you really need to get that done right, that's kind of where we come in to solve those problems.
Yeah, it's awesome. Is it one blanketed code that you have, or are you having to customize with your developers for each company?
Yeah, I think right now if you look at kind of the phase, I guess a good way to kind of think about the phases that we're in as it pertains to generative AI, just in like the last years, like phase one was there's these language models, and they're not particularly accurate, they're not perfect, and so a lot of people thought, okay, maybe we can take our own proprietary data. So like, for example, stuff that we do is we'll take like PubMed, which is like this large medical repository of text information publicly available. I think it's like tens of millions of clinical records. And we'll train a model to be an expert on like PubMed data. So a medical expert model.
Yeah.
But if you're a hospital, still that's not good enough for you and for your patients or for your researchers. So you also want like a database full of your accurate information.
Yep.
So phase one model, you can ask it health questions, not very good. Train it on healthcare data, gets a little bit better. But then you want to train it on, okay, patient X has these characterizations, and give it accurate information back into that medically trained model. And I think like the next phase that we're realizing all those phases aren't giving us that high fidelity outcome that we're looking for. And the next phase that we're going into is how we can kind of eliminate, just like what you said, is kind of that prompt variability and eliminate any of kind of the variations in the output. So it's pristine for these type of high value tasks, like where we have domain experts. And so kind of along this journey has only happened over the last year and a half, 2 years. you'd imagine the underlying software is changing a lot.
Yeah.
There's all these little kind of things that, your viewership might be bored about, but like there's things like embeddings models and vector databases and these, retrieval augmented generation framework tools. And, we essentially try them all. And we try to stay extremely current on the tools. And, ultimately though, you want to delight your customer. So you got to get, custom at this stage in the game to make it successful. And so, we're quite, we're changing all the time.
Yep.
But the industry is changing, at that same rate, and you can't really stay on legacy tools at this point in time. So in like the software world, we just kind of consider them microservices under our platform.
Yep.
And those microservices are constantly being swapped in and out.
Yeah, made better, swapped in and out.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. And that's why, like you said, you have a need for speed. If it was a hardware solution, it's impossible to be able to act so quickly. But because it's software, you said, 1 day, 2 weeks, you can really, with code and the right people, you can really change that software around. And so you're able to really customize it, make it micro, and make it specific to that industry and company as it's needing to learn. The AI is needing to learn. So, it's pretty fascinating. Like for somebody who has no knowledge base, right? But all I know, I can feel how much change is coming. And I can feel that if I don't get up to speed, at least on a base level, I'm going to get left behind. Like I still feel that. Do you agree with that? What do you think? You think it's like alarm, like learn this or you're going to fall behind, or you think I'm just a little crazy?
No, I think, we're on like a similar trajectory as, the original internet. Right. And I think, the world is operating much faster than it historically did. And so like those, early adopters always go through some pain and suffering, but simultaneously they're kind of rewarded with their expertise and their context over time. And so I think it's important to use like a lot of these tools. And I think, some of them are quite fun just to get familiar with. A lot of people are really inspired by text to image. And so there's a platform called Midjourney that does that. And they have like a really kind of unique user interface where they use a Discord channel as their user interface. So you can see what images other people are making and you can see what prompts they're using. And so there's all these, kind of prompt techniques around, if you say like, I want a 4K, you like write the lens type of the camera. If you write the lens type of the camera in the prompt, you'll get like a much better picture. And so all these kind of little techniques to do that. And so you can see what everybody else is kind of innovating on and making. And I think it's easier now to make, songs, with the language model can describe the lyrics for you. And there's voice capabilities to overlap on the songs. And some artists, have kind of like offer their voice license. So it's something where some artists are embracing it. I highly advise people to not infringe on other people's IP.
Yeah.
But you can kind of make generic content that doesn't infringe on other people's IP. So when you're like prompting stuff, you don't say, I want a song similar to, XYZ person, but you might say, okay, this is the style of the song that I'm looking for. I'm writing a jazz song and, so there's kind of like some nuances in how you can do this a little bit more ethically, not to infringe kind of on all these creators' IP. And that's one thing we need to solve right now. Is just kind of like for the consumer-facing applications, just make sure that really creative people that are contributing, can actually get paid on the innovation that's built on their platform.
Yeah, for somebody that's listening, they're like, they're listening, they agree that they need to get their feet wet in AI, but they don't know where to get started. What would be some like great places to start playing around with how AI can help your life?
Yeah, I think the key thing that I would focus on is like everybody has to do some element of marketing.
Yeah.
And, content marketing. And so, whether you're representing your business or you're just kind of, representing yourself with your, your friends or, you're planning for your next birthday party, right? So I think these tools are all kind of available to, generate like a cool birthday card or a poem or a birthday song or, and so I would just start small
What tools? Chat GPT? What tools would they go on?
Yeah, like GPT is great, and GPT is now multimodal. So like that Midjourney, I still think Midjourney's got a great tool for
What's Midjourney?
Midjourney is a company that helps you take text. You want to create an image, like an incredible image, and you write down kind of what you want to create, and it will auto-generate that.
The one you were just talking about. Yeah. So Midjourney is not Chat GPT. Midjourney is its own. If you want to go create an image for your birthday party, a cool one, or you want to start a social media agency. Like I think that's what I started to think is like, if you wanted to start a social media agency, and now you can go and use Midimage and create these really cool images for people and be like, hey, I can create all this stuff for you. You can do it in speed. Yeah. I mean, you got like, if you can learn those tools, like you got copyright with ChatGPT, make sure it's not hallucinating, because I do agree with you. Like I'll type something in ChatGPT and it spits out like this big thing. I'm like, this is so cool. And then you actually start to like read through it. You're like, that's not that accurate. Right. So there is that hallucination because you're like, hey, that just spit out everything I needed. And you're like, oh, got to move this out, got to move that out. But you're saying, so ChatGPT, Midimage,
or Midjourney,
sorry.
But yeah, well, I think even in the latest release of GPT, which I think is now publicly available, they have DALL-E, which is their text to image solution as well. So you can, but I think the cool thing is I would use it to just try to play with that kind of thing of like, can I make a social media post, with the image, with the text, and with voice, and there's a bunch of tools for voice as well, or
what tools? Songs. What tools we got? That's what I'm trying to give people some bait. Like Chat GPT, we got DALL-E, we got is it Midjourney?
Midjourney,
come on.
You can go to Replit, and I think like Replit on the website will have like some,
Replit.
Yeah, you can like write a song and check that out.
Go to Replit. Okay, so there you go.
So I think like everything's at scale to like make unlock your personal kind of like vision for creativity. And so like where there, I think it's like start out with like a loved one. Yeah. Somebody that you love and appreciate in your life, and then make some cool content for them. Make a poem, give the model some context about them or what they're into, make a poem, make a song, make a post. But a lot of this stuff is scaling into, if any of your listeners use Canva, Canva is starting to add all these features as well. Adobe starting to use all these features as well. So like, there's kind of all these platforms that creators are used to that are starting to integrate these features as well. So I think that's the best place to start out and do something that you're passionate about.
Yeah. Boom. I love it. Thank you for those steps. Take us back to Tiny Steen, like from the beginning, Tiny Steen. What was it like, growing up? What kind of family did you grow up in? And what was that like? Tell us a little bit more about the personal side.
Yeah. Tiny Steen. Well, Tiny Steen grew up in Eugene, Oregon. Yeah. So, over the hill from where we're at right now in beautiful Bend. Yeah. And I grew up in a construction family.
Okay, there we go.
So,
boom, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, every Saturday, Dad would pull me out of bed and go like sweep some houses out. My dad is like the biggest proponent of caulking you'll ever meet.
Yeah. He loves the caulking.
He loves caulking. There's never enough caulking to be done. Yeah. And, like there would be some summers where, he'd be like, I just, let the framers frame, and then you go caulk after them,
Yeah, hit all the spots you needed.
Yeah. And I think, I definitely licked a lot of caulking.
That's how you got so smart.
I don't know if that helped for sure, but I think, growing up, that's that's a grind. The construction life is a grind. I think, I'm really appreciative for like that style of, you kind of put it all on the line. I think people don't realize to be a developer, you've got to take big risks. To be a GC, you've got to take, decent risks as well. To be a subcontractor, you've got to earn your keep, every job in high quality. And I think it's a great industry in that regard where people, like this matters to people a lot. Real estate, how it looks and how it shows up. And these skills are incredible skills. And so I think that taught me a lot about, just grinding and constantly, improving and, making investments as well. So that was it's kind of formative for me growing up in a construction family.
Yeah, but you didn't take on the construction side. You pivoted into, into what you have today. Well, how come? What was that like? Just you saw a different picture? Or what was that like?
Gosh, I think it was just kind of the opportunity to kind of independently build something outside of your family business was kind of exciting. And I think it was I had the opportunity, so I took it. Yeah. I think that's fair to say. I'd say my father is not somebody that you'd be thrilled to work for. He's retired now, so you can go ask his former subs. He hopefully won't see this, but if his user interface was just kind of what we in the tech industry, we talk about like how their people's personality trait. If his UI was a little bit more friendly, I might have spent more time. I might have been in that industry still. But I think from afar, I definitely appreciate the work, and I think it was really fun to be kind of on the cutting edge of technology. Early in my career and life, and I think
Tell me about you got the opportunity to Intel, and you obviously did a phenomenal job because you were there for 17 years and you grew into a leadership role there. And tell me about the mental side when you've done something for 17 years. Sounds like you had a little fire in you, but tell me about the moment you go from like that security, something you've done for 17 years, to starting your own business. What was going on there mentally for you, emotionally, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I think so. There's kind of like two ways to it's kind of two competing forces as it pertains to like that, at least for me. One is this kind of just innate, experience that I had in kind of an entrepreneurial family and wanting to have my own independence and wanting to start a company, kind of that entire 17 years. So that fire like always burned. And, certainly like my little brother started a company before me. And, I think that fire always burned about kind of wanting that independence. And I've never was really kind of thrilled with like, maintaining the decorum that is expected of you in a large enterprise all the time.
You didn't like that corporate structure.
It's fine. I got really, really good at it. Yeah. I got really, really good at it, and, it definitely like makes me, who I am today. But it was not kind of like maybe like my inner personality. And so I was always kind of bottling myself up in that regard. And then simultaneously, I think one of the things that is challenging, particularly when you work for an incredible company, and this may seem odd, you work for an incredible company like Intel, but they get so successful that you can get abstracted from delighting your customers and making great products. And I mean, that's the only thing that matters is, how do we actually help people, that are our clients get a great outcome, make a great product that they're thrilled with. And I think, the more you get abstracted from that, the more you get in kind of these different cycles of different like variables that you're optimizing on. And, you'd be shocked if you work for an incredible company like that that's so successful. They might have a list of 40 things that they want you working on. Yeah. And all those programs are running in your mind. But the only, the program that really matters is, how do we delight our customers, build a great product? Of course, we want to keep our employees safe in doing that. But like those are like that complexity kind of grinds on you over time where you're making less intelligent decisions than you would have if you didn't have that complexity in your background. And so I think for me, certainly I wanted to like delete all those extra programs, go start a company and just focus on, delighting our customers, building beautiful products, working with great people, building them up in their careers and kind of keeping it simple. And I think that's a gift in itself if you don't work for a massive company, because there is some paperwork and there is some overhead and there is always, a ton of priorities just by the nature of the legacy of those companies. Yeah,
it's hard to steer that. If you got to change direction in that thing, that is a challenging thing to do. That's a massive, huge ship versus right now, you got a speedboat, baby. You could just rock and roll right around it. So let's do thank you for sharing that. Let's do a quick, like somebody who's, we'll see, this just came to my mind, like a kind of a fire brainstorm, like a fire sale brainstorm on, I'm a real estate agent. How can I use AI? Like we'll just go quick. We'll start with agent and we'll kind of go to, but let's say I'm a real estate agent listening. What would be a good, simple, quick way to start using AI in my business today?
Yeah, I think, well, just not to triple down on the content side, but I think a lot of real estate is just building like great advertisements and, showcasing, kind of their technology on the consumer side. So I think those tools are kind of complementary to the existing tools that folks have, just like creating, great advertisements, great images as well. I think that we're probably on the cusp of some due diligence work that can be done a little bit better as well. So I think like to the extent that like, you're researching, title reports or liens or other elements, and you're kind of going above and beyond for your client to think about those little nuances. I feel like there's a great opportunity to kind of like start using these tools. Not perfect yet in that regard, but I think there's an opportunity for that as well. But yeah, those would be like the two that I would riff off the most. I don't know. What do you think?
Marketing and due diligence. No, that's exactly what I would do. I would do that. And then if I can speed up exactly that, like maybe even if you can get good at prompting, trying to have it make like these special reports. I know that if you're a real estate agent, you got to stay top of mind and have good market data and create good graphs, good inventory graphs. So I would take what I would do is take Flex MLS data and make them like personalized graphs to you, right? So the graphs that you already see, absorption, et cetera, make them cool, make them personalized, and marketing, use it for marketing. So take this data that you already have access to on the Flex MLS, but now make it specific to you and just try to speed up that ability to push out that you're the expert in that area. So I agree on that. What about subcontractor or like construction guy? Is there any way for them to use AI right now?
That's a great question. I think, so first of all, the other thing I would just say for both real estate agents and subcontractors is, just a fun thing to do is just to take, a document, whether that's like, a statement of work, or a quote that you're working on, or if you're if you're an agent and you want to do due diligence, and you can just like upload these massive PDF documents, even like, I don't know, HOA rules. Who reads a 100-page HOA document, right? Yeah. So all of that stuff is like fun to play with. Most, I like Claude 3 for this actually a little bit better than GPT.
It's called Claude 3.
Claude, if you go check out the website, Claude, there's two really big AI.
How do you spell it?
CLAUDE.
Okay, Claude.
There's these two big research houses. OpenAI kind of competes with this other research house called Anthropic, and they're building out that product. But that's a great one to also like upload, massive documents that you want really specific answers for. And so like, how that manifests itself is, like if you're a subcontractor and you're like, they just listed like the new, electrical, code. And it's like hundreds of pages. And you're like, oh man, I just want to see if this has changed because, I'm curious about it. And, you want it to be easily accessible and, you just don't want to read through all this paperwork, right? You can start interacting and querying with that right now. Now, I would always I would always recommend just going back and, ask, and getting that line in the documentation that says, oh, that is the code. So you kind of want to go back and click on that.
Yeah, double check.
Yeah, double check on it. Yeah. But I think it's a great starting point to like, if you're trying to look through a multi-100-page document, like how to, now 74 is the page where it's being referenced. Like, let me go read it and get that right as well. So, and I think like just doing things like if you're like looking for like a draft of a contract that you want to put together, it's a great starting point to draft a contract and then pair it with kind of like, the industry kind of standard contracts that you see as well. And, I think there's a lot of tools in that regard. I'm thinking like, I always think subcontractors can always spice up their advertising a bit. I feel like, I'm like framers, I think to me, framers never even have signs on their cars. Yeah. So I'm always like, guys, come on. Like, so if they can do a little bit of marketing, I don't think anybody as a sub needs to go triple down on it. But I feel like, if you want to grow your business, it makes sense to take some time to do some marketing. The tools have never been easier. You don't need to hire a bunch of, experts and stuff. And, you can even, you can get pretty close to creating a great website too. Yeah. With like the click of a button. If you go on to GoDaddy right now, you buy a domain and, they'll give you a one-click website outcome, based on, some high-level entry points. It's not going to be perfect, But
better than if you have nothing.
Yeah, better than nothing. So it's never been easier to do this type of stuff that, may have intimidated folks in the past based on the cost of the time.
You can literally what Steen's saying is you can literally now go create a website in a click of a button, right? So it's pretty amazing from a speed side.
Yeah.
And I think starting somewhere, right? Like if you don't have a website now because it's been intimidating to get used to the computer skills, well, now you can do it with a click of a button. You don't have to go and spend thousands of dollars on a website designer who's not going to do a good job anyways. Learn from my experience. Who's not going to do a good job anyways. You can just do it with a click of the button, right? So I love that. Thanks for those tips. Let's talk cryptocurrency a little bit, like the crypto world. We talked AI, but like crypto, blockchain. What are your thoughts on that technology? What's going to happen there? You have any opinions?
Wow. I think it's a really unique space. And I think fiat currency, has the backing of, these governments, with militaries, with, I think, people tend to think that fiat doesn't have asset backing, but, you have the assets, the entire, government, and they do own, a lot of property and a lot of assets, and they do, part of their assets is like their defense and their law enforcement community. And I feel like, for fiat currency in particular, that's a pretty strong point. So it really depends on what the governments are going to accept as it pertains to crypto and what they're comfortable with. And so so you got to kind of speculate on what's happening there. China cracked down quite aggressively. The US, SEC has been pretty tight. Well, a number of bodies. There's another number of 3-letter agencies kind of fighting over crypto regulation right now in the US. And I think it's quite precarious in that regard. I did hear that one presidential candidate is starting to lean toward opening it up too, which is quite interesting. Yeah. But so
you think, you think regulation's coming, right? Because you got, of course, anytime a fiat currency gets challenged in this whole picture of like, it's decentralized, we're going to be good to go. I think that you have to be real careful when you buy into purely that message, because there's a lot of powers that be that can very quickly take you from this idea that it's decentralized, free the people type currency, and then the regulations just, bam, you're right in the face. So you think there's going to be some regulations, or what's your? Yeah,
there's kind of like, we're at all different stages of that. And I think, you look at like China and where they're at, highly regulated, and they're, very concerned about that and not letting it trade on exchanges as well. So we've been a little bit more open in the US, and it's like, the question is, how long does that sustain? So that'd be like the main question that I have. You
think we're going to go to a digital currency instead, fiat based, like digital central bank, digital currency?
Yeah. The Federal Reserve's, talked about that. And I think
for a long time.
Yeah, and India did that too. So, kind of India transitioned from paper currencies to predominantly digital currency, and it was quite an interesting transition because they kind of had this opportunity for people to like bring in all this paper currency that they had, and there was a lot of money that came out of the woodwork that was outside of the traditional circulation that I think, surprised a lot of people. But that's the value of like a digital currency as it pertains to these federal governments. They get a lot of insights on where all the money is as well. So I'm not sure that has the same value as the original vision behind crypto. Or Bitcoin is kind of the opposite of that. Although I think with all of these things, I think you should be a little bit of an independent critical thinker on how all these transactions can be observed and tracked, because even with Bitcoin, it is not, there's been many cases where they've tracked down ownership flows as well.
So, everyone thinks it's completely independent, but they can track it down. It's a wild world. You look at like history doesn't it doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And you can see even cycles with gold, right? Remember when fiat currency originally was backed by gold, and what happened, how that cycled out, and how in 1971 Nixon took us off the gold standard, right? And you can start to see these money cycles, and it's pretty interesting. Like you said, in India, when that was happening, gold, you were supposed to take your gold and turn it in. I think that was under Roosevelt more. You're supposed to take your gold and turn it in and get it exchanged, right? So I mean, that was an interesting move if you just think about how in history that was happening, and now you have it with like fiat currency taking your, like you said, out of the woodworks came some dollar, or what's rupees? Is that the Indian? Yeah. So
absolutely,
out came the rupees, and now it's because it has to go into the digital currency. I mean, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, and it's quite an interesting thing. And I think that if you think that the federal government, after all the power it already has, is going to just let it rock and roll without regulation, I think you really need to take a deep look at that and analyze that. And like you said, be a good independent thinker there, because it's going to become very, very interesting as it evolves. What about blockchain, crypto, one piece, right? And it's pretty wild to watch that world in general, like meme stocks and meme crypto. That whole world is a wild world that's new. But what about the blockchain technology? Talk to me about that.
Yeah. Well, by the way, just to alter back to what you said around meme stocks, I mean, I almost canceled on you today because I was really interested in what was happening with GME and the
exactly.
Is it Hello Kitty?
Roaring Kitty, baby. Roaring Kitty. Yeah, you're like, I can't come. I got to see what's happening with Roaring Kitty.
Roaring Kitty's live streaming right now.
I know, he's rocking.
And
we better tune into that, man.
Yeah, I mean, GME just put out like millions more shares.
I know.
So he was in a good position for a short squeeze. I mean, there were some people theorizing he'd make $1 billion on this latest trade.
Yeah.
And so, wow. I mean, it's just incredible. Like that's an incredibly interesting thing happening. But yeah, when humans like generate momentum and interest, and they can go fight the big short sellers and hedge funds, and I don't know, like short selling itself, I think is something that we've embraced, but I don't know that it's really great. Everybody says, it's good because it keeps prices at the right valuation. Also selling keeps prices at the right valuation too. So, I think, naked shorts, is something that maybe like, is a bit scary and maybe not best thing for us all to focus on. As well as like derivatives trading. I would never like advise somebody to get too fired up about derivatives trading as well. But like back to your original question, cryptocurrency is really, I mean, cryptography in itself is always incredible. You can do really cool stuff with cryptography, and there's like some beautiful work. But the blockchain, I think, really is still struggling to find like use cases that would help us, with every, everyday use cases in humanity. I think there's some really cool projects that kind of are pervasive across different industries, like in the banking industry, to like, transform our banking system with blockchain. And I think there's a couple banks, actually fintech banks, that like didn't have their website up for like a month or two. So people couldn't log in and get their funds.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty wild situation there.
Yeah. There was over $130 billion fund out of Australia too, that Google accidentally deleted some of its accounts on as well, not all of it. And so you think about like, wow, just having a distributed ledger, so helpful. Yeah. When we're dealing with the world's assets, and just to make sure people can get access to their funds and their money, right? And it's like all these pensioners in Australia were worried for a few days, and all these people that had access to this website, you can't log into your money. It's kind of scary because we're entrusting all of this banking industry. I think we all trust it because it makes our lives easier and better. And they do a great job, but they do, they can make mistakes. So having like that distributed ledger is quite a value. And I think, right now, I think the Gen AI kind of blew the rails on what we can really do to like transform kind of our experiences short term. So there's a lot of engineering momentum that shifted away from crypto in that regard.
Are they all going to come together? So like blockchain with AI, with robotics, is it all going to come together and create that next big revolution? Is that what's going to come together? Because it seems to me like that's been building for quite some time. Is that what's going to happen, or what? Tell me what you think.
I think they, what's beautiful about, like cryptocurrency in that crew is they want to be open and kind of, and transparent.
Transparent. That's the whole pitch, right? It's transparent transactions on a solid blockchain technology.
And kind of, and like democratize all of these capabilities for people. Robots are very closed. So some of the best robot companies are out of Japan with proprietary program languages, and they're closed.
Patents and
and it costs billions, at least hundreds of millions to build great robot companies.
Yeah.
And so these companies probably they're probably not going to like mesh well, with like the blockchain ethos.
Are we going to have, instead of this smartphone, are we going to have a little robot hanging out with us instead? You think that's going to happen or not?
Like an ambient robot.
Yeah, like what's up, little robot? Like I gotta go. Are we gonna have that? Like the integration between the two, the smartphones are just gonna be out, and we have a.
I think it's almost irrelevant insofar as like you could have whatever modality of interface you want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like
no, I don't know actually what you mean.
No, so like if you want all the if you want all the features of a phone to be in a cool little robot,
it's gonna happen.
Like it's totally doable today.
Yeah.
We can make an interactive voice robot that that operates your phone and all your systems and all your applications for you, and like that's what you think is fun and cool.
I don't know what I think is fun. Like a house robot, like you come in, they open the door for you. It's
I think,
hey, Mr. Vanderbilt, welcome back to your house.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a really great comment made on social media by somebody who was complaining about modern generative AI, and they said, look, I want AI, like I don't want AI to go like make beautiful content for me and make music and do drawings. Like that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I want AI to do my dishes and clean my house.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And and you can, but like I think that is robotics is really hard. We actually did some. We've done quite a bit at my company. It's more of like an adjacent project because robot engineering is really hard. But we've done some stuff in that. But like physical robots are very hard.
Yeah.
And the reason like generative AI is so cool today, and is because it's trained on all this like. All our creative content's public, right? Because if you're creating cool stuff and you're talking, you're interacting on the internet, like you want to show that stuff off, right? Turns out there's not like a billion images of people cleaning their house on YouTube.
Yeah.
If we had a billion videos of people cleaning their house or doing all those functions, it would make it easier to train the robots on how to do the right thing. And so. And plus the mechanical engineering element of the robots is just non-trivial. And so that stuff is just coming together. It's going to come together. It's a little slower, although like, if you look at, every car that you've ever owned,
every iPhone,
going back decades, there's a robot involved in all these manufacturing processes. They're just not like what we imagine as an AI robot. They're usually like a fixed function robot, like, for automotive manufacturing, like one of the most common things a robot does is welding. Yeah. They have robots that weld. They have robots that rivet. And it's just, like those mundane kind of single function tasks. And so like multi-function robot capability, like in like human emulated tasks, are quite difficult to do. And so it's kind of funny because we have the fundamentals, but just the juxtaposition of all these fundamentals is really challenging. Like, for example, we can enable the robot to have better vision than a human.
Yep. Like
we can exceed the vision of a human eye, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the eye-hand coordination is going to exceed a human. Right. Yep. And so that's when things get really hard and really complex. And so anyhow, I think the winners of the robot stuff will probably not be,
home robots.
They probably won't have the ethos of like the blockchain industry's original intent to be like open and, kind of back to your additional question. But we got home robots today. We've got, we got Roku robots.
Yeah. So it's coming forth.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I got to know this. Neurochip. they're working on that. Elon's working on that. Let's say that gets adopted. I know initially the idea is to help people, like help paralyzed people who really need the function. But let's say it goes beyond that now, and maybe 10 years down the line, you could go get neurochipped and get access to all this instant information, or you can just stay unchipped. Would you chip yourself? Would you not chip yourself? Is that going to happen? What's the feedback, Steen?
I think Neuralinks, I mean, it's incredible technology. And I think they did have like, the first patient or maybe the first few patients actually are like experiencing, positive benefits. And, these are people that, really needed help. So it's amazing that they're doing that. I kind of think about it. If you remember when Google Glass came out.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of stories that came out where like folks were walking like downtown San Francisco with the Google Glass on, and and folks would like throw punches at them and break their glasses because they thought like there was such a privacy infringement.
Like don't look at me, don't. It's scary.
Yeah. I feel like the biggest question I would ask myself, is like what problem am I really trying to solve, by having like a Neuralink, and like what is it, just like access to information that's available, on my phone anyway, or under other modalities anyway. I mean, I would really just ask myself like what problem I'm really trying to solve before I sign up for that implant. I'm gonna stay away from it. I think if you have a big problem you're trying to solve, like you don't have verbal communication, you're trying to restore verbal communication so you can talk to your loved ones, like that. Makes cool. Total sense. But if you don't have a problem, like let's not go jump right into that, right?
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree with you 100% there. It's definitely one of those it's one of those fun bar conversations, right? Because it's just an interesting one to play out, and I agree. I'm staying away on that independent thinker component, right? It is important to look at all this change. There's a massive wave of change coming. And I always look at it, and I try to, because I have a really strong, amazing wife too, and a family, you try to look at making sure that you understand what's coming and then protecting against different probabilities, right? So, I like to, purely from an investment side, I like to look at everything that's happening and hold probability. So I like gold and silver, physical assets, enough food in case something happens. It's like not full prepper, but definitely got some prepper in me, right? The guns. I got enough stuff that I got a plan right over here. Okay, what are the probabilities that happens? Probably very low, but I got a plan, right? And then I like to make sure that I'm not going to close my mind. Like all this change is happening. I cannot do anything about it. Even if you don't like it, it's happening. So you might as well embrace it. Just like people don't like how much immigration is coming to Bend, but guess what? You can't change it. So either you embrace it and you join it, or you change your mindset about it, or you just like, I think you're going to end up falling behind. So, I think that when you said independent thinker, I really like that, to be able to make sure that you're not just floating around or, following the crowd. You're thinking for yourself and looking at the probabilities of what's going to happen, staying up to date, and, making good decisions for yourself.
Yeah. I think it's also important to just do a little work on the other side, like we often talk about, kind of like red teaming something versus blue teaming something. I think as a society, kind of
red team, blue team, meaning
just like have two different points of view.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so, ask yourself, like, what's the other side of the argument?
Yeah.
Put yourself in other people's shoes. And, argue both sides. Or, if you're talking about your family, maybe your wife takes the counterpoint, and she has a conversation with you on, the opposite point as you do, and you guys swap them, but I think for companies, certainly you want to kind of like red team and blue team these, and, kind of often people will say like straw man the alternative argument.
Yeah.
So if you don't think through like the alternative argument, you're not really intellectually curious about that, then, that's not going to lead to great outcomes. You have to be intellectually curious about why other people view the things, or why this change, is happening as well. And so I think it's important for people to spend a little time kind of putting themselves in other people's shoes, straw manning out that like alternative argument, and, doing a little work on it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, just just getting in there and researching themselves. And,
it's pretty wild how polarizing it has become because I agree with you 100%, right? It's really, I like it in the red team, blue team situation. It's really important to try to look at both sides and see, really get that Ray Dalio idiocracy rather than like, my ego, or I see it this way, I want this to happen. But it's pretty wild how polarizing that can be, how polarizing, let's say you think about it on the red team side and you see it that way, how much like anger and just separation, how polarizing that has become. It's actually one of the problems I truly see is people can't have like on the political side specifically, people stop talking about politics because it has now become so polarizing. That's pretty wild if you think about how that's happened. It shouldn't be that way. You should be able to have two good conversations, and even if you have differing opinions, still stay together as good neighbors. But I think that's just like they are ripping stuff apart that way, and it's a concern I definitely have, because I think that in today's day and age, it's become so emotional that no actual good intellectual like conversations are happening. And usually the best ideas come from like two things hitting this way and going in a positive pivot, right? So
yeah. I love that you brought up Ray Dalio. He puts out great content. And, he's had a lot of success in life, and I love his concept of a idea meritocracy.
Yeah, that's what it is, right? Yeah. Idea meritocracy. Of course,
which is like the best idea wins.
Yep,
right?
Exactly.
And you have to have like two-way conversation. And so ultimately, if you kind of just sit in a group that thinks like you, it's a pleasant place to be. Right?
I like it.
Trust me, I've been there. I've been there and I am there. And it's always great to be in a group where you all think the same.
Yeah.
But we have to like put ourselves out there and challenges ourselves to evolve a little bit and like look at all the other like alternative viewpoints and ideas. And I think, politics is just one aspect of that. I was really just kind of thinking in general around, the change that's happening in the world, and I think, I think there's like, there's a good debate on, the people that are just like fully digitally native.
Yep.
And like, you're kind of like experience as a small time prepper.
Yep.
Right. Like, it's like,
nobody knows that about me. Now they know. Now it's public out there.
Yeah. Like, but like you want to be able to like, do the basic things like, know north from south and east to west, and like, kind of be able to like, provide for your family for a few weeks if something goes wrong, or how to make clean drinking water. And like, these are kind of fundamentals that are maybe nice to have, but like,
lost, like mostly lost in today's day and age.
Yeah,
so,
but the digital native is like, hey, like, time savings, exceptional, right? Like their life is they're not spending all this extra time prepping for like something that may be a 1 out of a 10,000 probability, right? So like
a game of probability. You said it really good there. It's a game of probabilities, right? Yeah. So yeah. But I will say, wouldn't you rather make sure, in the case it does happen, for the amount of time it takes to get it teed up and the amount of money it takes to get it teed up, it's not that much. Like, to get for a month's worth of food, 6 months worth of gas that you rotate, to have especially one, for me, it wasn't a big deal, but once I had kids I had to take care of, it's like, just in case, right? Like I would feel very vulnerable and like a failed father if that 1 out of 10,000 probability happens and I wasn't prepared, I would, well, then I'd be very vulnerable.
Yeah, I agree. But I think another way to think about it is just like, it's kind of fun to do.
Yeah.
Like
it is fun to do.
And you should do those things if you enjoy it. Yeah. Like, and teach your kids like survival skills, and, and I think it's good to like, it's good to have like a bar of silver around and, social, show your kid what it looks like, or
we do a lot of
plan ahead. Have some canned beans. I mean, it's like, this is all, if you enjoy it, like you definitely should do it. And I think there's like good muscle, it's kind of like going to the gym where it's good for you and it's good like stimulation. And so you should probably get out and do a little bit of that. But anything done like in a like kind of overindulgence way is probably not great on that front. And
I agree. That's across the board. Just so everybody knows, I don't have good survivor skills. I just have a plan to get to where the group that really is like my wife's family lives in Wyoming, and they have beautiful land there. they're very off the grid. You know, they would be able to make it happen. They live off the land. You know, they live off their own stuff, and so it's pretty cool. So I just have a plan to get there. You know, you're not talking to a survival guy here. You're just talking to a guy that has a little plan.
Yeah, and it might be kind of fun, for the planner to, I don't know, save a few people, become a hero in other people's stories.
Never know. Come on.
They didn't, these fully digital people that, didn't know, how to find their own drinking water and, and you could save some people during that time period and teach them. And wouldn't that be so rewarding? You
just never know.
Yeah.
Out of the 1 in a 10,000 probability.
Huh? Yeah. I'd love to save a few lives. That would be a blast, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It would be dang good. It would be. What's the movie? There was a great movie. They're not making movies like they used to. I'll say that. My wife and I went to a movie the other day. We had our first night away from kids. And we're like, hey, wouldn't it be fun to go to a movie? When's the last time you went to a movie? And we watched the movie like halfway through, and both her and I looked at each other like, we got to get out of here. Like, this is not a good movie anymore. But they did make a funny one about an astro hitting Earth. Don't Look Up, I think it was called. And I like that movie. Like, kind of talks about the probability of the end of the world happening and how people would respond to an astro hitting the Earth. Have you seen that movie?
No, but yeah. It's a great storyline.
Yeah.
I'm with you though. Modern Hollywood, they're so risk averse. They're just repackaging stuff.
That's it.
And
what's happening there? Why?
What would happen to this? Oh man, there were so many great actors and writers and would just building amazing content, and somehow they've completely unwound all those skills.
You think we're getting dumber, or what's the problem?
I think it's probably just the incentive system inside these big studios that they have to generate highly probable hits.
I see.
And in the risk of I feel don't you feel actors and actresses are getting older too?
Yeah.
They're just going with they're
the same one.
Nobody's taking the risk on, the next generation.
Yeah.
And I think that in itself, there's just risk aversion. I'm sure it's incentives. But yeah, I think Hollywood is lost a little bit.
It might be dying too if you think about what's happening because of social media and YouTube and cable TV. It might also be legitimately on its way to dying because there are, from a risk side, right? Let's say you're the young who the stars that would have become the Hollywood stars, they're now YouTube stars, and they're like, fuck you, I don't need. They're like, what do you mean? You own my name, you own my stuff. It's like, no, you don't control that. I'm just going to put out a YouTube video and make, a ton of money independently. Right. So I think that might be it too, is that scene might start to just die a little bit more because it has involved in the YouTube, the social media, that consumption. I think that's a real problem for the kind of the standard movie Hollywood style. I think that's going to be a big problem.
Yeah, but at the same time, people are consuming so much content, and
but people love YouTube stars now more than anything. That's even a mind blowing one for me, right? Some of these young upcoming, it's YouTube stars. It's if you talk to if I talk to my nieces who are probably my closest to that, grown up in the new-ish world there of 13, 15, 16, 18, what they love and what it's YouTube stars is the thing, and that's that's a wild one too, of people watching other people do things. My sons, I have to battle that. They love watching something on YouTube called Caleb, where a kid's playing with monster trucks. That's a weird world. That's kind of wild.
That's one thing. That generational shift is kind of lost upon me. I think that when that really hit for me was when we were doing stuff for the gaming industry at Intel.
Okay.
And you were seeing
naming industry, what?
Gaming.
Okay, gaming.
The computer gaming industry. And you would see oh man, there's a stadium filled up with thousands of people to watch people game.
Yeah.
And then
get to watch.
And then, and because when I grew up, man, you were always elbowing your buddy. Hey, let me in.
Yeah.
Let's add another player.
Yeah,
right?
let's go, bro. I want in. Yeah.
That shift to me is the shift to observation. I don't know how that happened or when, but to me, at least my limited human memory pattern recognition skills were man, we all in my generation, we wanted our hands on the controller.
Yeah.
We wanted to in the game, or we wanted to play with the trucks. I want to play with the truck.
Yeah.
We might be fighting over it. I don't want to watch some other Yeah, it's that thing is a little bit odd.
It's like more than a little bit odd. And I've like, I don't know what's going to happen there, if that's going to create like big issues, big challenges for the generations to come or not. Because, it's one thing I also remember like when my wife and I had our first child, we're like, oh yeah, the classic, like, no screen family, not going to be a screen family, right? And then the reality comes in of like the challenges, the struggles, etc. And the easiest, simplest thing is, hey, I need to do the dishes. I need a moment alone. I need something. Screen, right? So that's like a really, really interesting thing that I don't think we quite have the data on what that's going to be like for when my children are, they're 4 and 2 now. What's that like in the future? I mean, we'll find out. It's kind of scary to me.
Yeah, we probably don't have a sufficient, study on that and the data, but we probably do have common sense.
Yeah.
And I think common sense says it's
Watch out.
It's not good for you.
Yeah.
The screen time's not great for you.
Yeah.
And it's not a great use of your children's time. But, and the other thing is like, I mean, we had a couple over for dinner last night, and and my son was being insistent on, interrupting that conversation. It's like, gotta get some screen time.
Exactly.
So it's like, but should I have had the discipline to, just to sit him down and make him experience an adult conversation? Probably would have been better for him, And so, I'm in the same shoes as you, but I feel like common sense says, these screens aren't great for people. And this shift to just observation centric behavior,
that's a great
that I don't understand. And I'd love to learn more about what like the latest, some of the brilliant minds in that space think about that. Like, and if I'm wrong, and we were always just kind of observers, and I was the only guy that wanted to get in the game and play, but
it's not. I think you're right. It's the same thing, right? Because when you didn't have it, think about it. When you didn't have that, then you wouldn't do it. And it is entertaining, right? I think that's what the challenge that happens with the screens is. You get a moment of entertainment there. And what I found wild too is the programming that's happening on those screens. So, my 4-year-old son, he'll watch that, and then that's what he wants to talk about, or that's what he wants to do. So there's real programming happening on there. And I think for parents, that's, like you said, having the discipline and challenge, which I am not saying we are far from perfect on it. It is a dang hard thing to do, but I think that's something that we have to watch as we're going to grow this new generation. Like we got to figure out a way to solve that. And I don't know. There's no clear answer for me yet, but I do know, like you said, with common sense, that thing is programming my son. And if I'm not careful, like I got to watch that. I got to, it's a scary one.
Well, certainly, like that's the most important thing that we all do. If you're doing it, is raising humans.
Yeah,
it's hard work. So anybody that decides to be a parent, it's great for humanity to take the extra time to raise their kid right, but it's hard. It's hard work.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's hard work. Steen, well, I appreciate it. I mean, it's been a blast. We've gone, deep in the AI, but kind of all over the place. Thanks so much for coming on. I really enjoyed our friendship, our new friendship, and I can't wait to continue to grow with you, learn from you, man. Thanks for taking the time to be on here. And I'm really excited to watch what happens with your company and the future of AI.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. And, to everybody, all your viewership, wishing you guys the best. And, go play with some of these tools, learn, but, maybe start out with a loved one, make something cool for a loved one. I think that's a great starting point.
Yeah. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, Steen, or find you, where can they look you up?
They can hit me up just on LinkedIn is a good way to do it. Just Steen Graham. There's probably only 1 or 2 of me. Just reach out, add me on LinkedIn. I think that'd be great.
Heck yeah. We'll link to all that. And thanks so much for coming on. With that, we will see you on the next one, baby.